Hello everyone and welcome to lecture number 7. In the last lecture we have studied about the Heisenberg exchange interactions in ferromagnets considering two hydrogen nuclei. In the last lecture we have studied Heisenberg exchange interactions considering two hydrogen nuclei. Right? And we have found out the importance of JE, that is exchange integral. J is nothing but exchange integral. J is nothing but exchange integral. If the value of J is positive, J is nothing but exchange integral. If J is positive, if the value of JE is positive, then it will allow parallel spin, that is ferromagnetism, and if it is negative, then anti-parallel spin. And if it is negative, value of J is negative, then it will be having anti-parallel spin and anti-ferromagnetism. Right? Anti-ferromagnetism. Right? This is all about the value of J. Now, in today's lecture, we will see that how actual this alignment of this kind of dipole moments, which kind of electronic configuration, is responsible for the generation of this kind of parallel spin, is responsible to generate parallel spin and anti-parallel spin. Which kind of electronic configuration and how the arrangement of electron is responsible for parallel and anti-parallel spin, right? So the today's topic is, today we are going to study ferromagnetism in iron cobalt and nickel, and also having non-integral values of magnetization. Non-integral value of magnetization. Non-integral value of magnetization means the Bohr magnetron or the magnetic dipole moment. The total magnetic dipole moment, right? It's nothing but the total magnetic dipole moment, right? Now, if we see, we will consider these three cases: iron, cobalt and nickel. Now, first of all, let us take nickel. First of all, let us take an example of nickel and let us see that what is the electronic configuration of nickel. How? the electronic configuration of nickel is generating parallel spin, right? Now, electronic configuration of nickel is given as 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s2, 3p6, 3d8. This is 3d8, it's D, 3d8 and 4s2, right? This is the electronic configuration of nickel. Now think about over here, this cell is completely filled. This is completely filled. This is also filled. This is also filled. This is also filled. This is also filled. Right? All these cells are completely filled. But think about this one. This one. This d orbital is not completely filled. D orbital is incompletely filled. Right? D orbital is incomplete. D orbital is incomplete. Actually, it has to be 10 electrons. And again, this is completely filled. So, if we enlarge these two last d and 4s2 orbital, d and s orbital, last d and s orbital, then we will get nickel as 3d8 and that is this is 3d orbital and this is 4s2 where you have two electrons that is completely filled. This is completely filled. Over here it will have one electron. Let us say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then it will start pairing. This is 6, this is 7, this is 8. So 8 electrons are filled. We can see 8 electrons are filled in this. Now, if we consider these two electrons are unpaired. These two electrons are unpaired, right? These two electrons are unpaired. Which two? These two electrons. These two electrons are unpaired. Now, this is what we have taken consideration for a single atom of nickel. This is for single atom of nickel. For single atom. Now, if we consider n number of atoms in a bulk material, you will have number of this kind of unpaired electrons, and that unpaired electrons are actually responsible are these unpaired electrons are actually responsible for the parallel alignment of magnetic dipole moments. are responsible for parallel spin, are responsible for parallel spin. If we have n number of atoms, then we will have more number of magnetic dipole moments, and the total resultant magnetic dipole moment of a material will be large. That is why it is ferromagnetic. That is why it is ferromagnetic. Now, according to the numerical value, the atomic moments, let me rub this. The atomic moments responsible for a single nickel atom, the atomic moments for Ni is equals to 2. That is Bohr magnetron. Bohr magnetron is nothing but the magnetic dipole moment, right? This is, we have 2, that is atomic moments. This is nothing but atomic moment. One is for this, one is for this, right? We have 2 individual electrons that are unpaired with each other and residing in the 3d orbital. That will gives rise to the parallel spin, 2 parallel diatomic magnetic moments, and that magnetic moments is considered to be atomic moments for Ni, that is 2. That is the integral value, right? That is the integral value. But remember, actually the practical value is 0.61. The practical value is 0.61. This is the integral value, this is non-integral value. Now, why the practical value is 0.61? That is having another reason, that is, the another reason is the non-integral values are due to the outermost orbit and their overlapping. Overlapping of the energy levels due to the modification of permitted energy values for the outermost electrons of atoms forming this solid. Right, these non-integral values are due to the 4s, this 4s orbital and 3d orbital. Why? Because 4s is the outermost orbital and 3d is the inner orbital with respect to 4s orbital. Right? Now, when 4s and 3d orbitals are going to overlap, because you can assume that suppose this is one nuclei, this is another nuclei, right? This is one nickel atom, this is another nickel atom, this is 1, this is 2. Let us assume that this is the 3d orbital and this is 4s, this is 3d, and this is 4s. So the outermost orbit where it interacts, this will try to change the value of magnetic moments, and this is responsible for why it is having a non-integral values, right? Because you can see 3d and 4s electrons orbitals are both combining with each other. These are also combining with each other, right? Now this is what we have seen about nickel. Let us see for Fe, electron and cobalt. Now Fe is having electronic configuration same as what nickel is having, but its 3d orbital is filled with only 6 electrons instead of 8 electrons. Nickel it was 8, in Fe it is only 6. So 3d 6, and it will have let us have 4s2, where both the electrons are paired. Over here one is full paired and rest 4 of them are unpaired. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, right? So here you can see that there are total 4 unpaired electrons are there, which will contribute to parallel spin. The atomic dipole moments contribute to the atomic dipole moments for parallel spin. These 4 unpaired electrons will be contributing to the atomic dipole moments for alanine parallel spin. Means the atomic moment of Fe by its value is 4, but the non-integral value is non-integral value is 2.22. That is also due to the modification in the outermost energy levels, right? Now similarly we can have for cobalt, that is having 3d7, One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. In the same way 4s2 will be completely filled. So we have 3 electrons in the unpaired state, which is going to give rise to the atomic moments, right? The integral value is 3 and non-integral value is 1.70. Now there is one equation to find out this non-integral value, that is given by n effective, the number of effective Bohr magnetron. Don't get confused, this Bohr magnetron is nothing but atomic moments, is nothing but the magnetic dipole moments. It's one and the same. Effective number of more magnetrons per atom is N effective is equals to saturation magnetization at 0 degree Kelvin by 0 degree Kelvin by number of atoms per unit volume. Number of atoms per unit volume. Right? So this is all about that how ferromagnetism is present in iron, cobalt and nickel, and how it is having non-integral values. Now they have also calculated the atomic moment for respective atom, which you can go through by yourself. Means number of electrons lying above the Fermi energy level and below the Fermi energy level. That is, they have taken an example of nickel. That I think you can go it by yourself. Okay. Further, after this ferromagnetism, understanding the ferromagnetism in iron, cobalt and nickel, the another topic is ferromagnetic domains and hysteresis. That is ferromagnetic domains, ferromagnetic domains and hysteresis. Now the here word comes ferromagnetic domains, means we want to understand first of all that what is ferromagnetic domain. First of all, we will understand that what is ferromagnetic domains, and then we will correlate with the hysteresis. So first of all, we will understand the ferromagnetic domains, right? Now let us assume that this is, we have one piece of material and let us assume that it has been divided into four major parts, right? So if we assume that these are four individual domains, if we assume four parts, then each will act as a domain. So domain is nothing but a small part of a whole material, right? This is whole material, and if we divide, we are dividing into four parts for just our understanding, but in actual practice domains will be in smaller size, and there will be multiple number of these small parts will be there in a solid, and it will have number of domains. But this is for just we are assuming this four domains, four parts, for just our understanding, right? Now let us assume that the first domain is having total magnetic moment in this direction, the another is having in this direction, third is having in this direction, and fourth is having in this direction. This is the total magnetic moment. Remember, this is nothing but the total magnetic moment
of this domain. This is the total magnetic moment of this domain. This is the total resultant magnetic dipole moment of this domain. Now here we can see that the resultant magnetic domains, moments are zero. The resultant are zero because all four are having an opposite directed magnetic moment. That is Bohr magnetron. Don't get confused. All of them is having an opposite directed one pair, right? So total will be zero. Now as we know that in ferromagnet, for a ferromagnetic material, when we apply an external magnetic field, this is external magnetic field H in this direction, this is external magnetic field H, then for a ferromagnet, for a ferromagnetic material, the moments will try to align in the H direction, right? In the H applied field direction, right? For a ferromagnetic material, we know that dipole moments will try to align in this particular direction. Why? Because the magnetic field is being applied in this direction, right? Now there will be two cases. If the magnetic field is strong and if the magnetic field is weak. Now we want to see that how these all four magnetic dipole moments will try to orient themselves in the presence of external magnetic field. Right? Now let us take example 1, that is in weak field, that is H. In weak field H, what will happen is this, any one of the domain, this or this, either any one of the domain will try to grow more. Any one of the domain will try to increase the area. Let us see the picture that how it will look. What happened is this domain right. So this is the bigger one, this is the smaller one, this is much smaller, this is much smaller. Now in the presence of weak field, this kind of scenario will happen where one of the domain will try to increase its area and the resultant magnetic dipole moments of a material will have a spontaneous magnetization. So this has been written as the written as the volume of domain favorably orient the volume of domain favorably oriented with respect to the field increases at the expense of unfavorably oriented domains. Unfavorably oriented domains means this particular domain will increase its volume, its area as compared to the other three domains. That is in the presence of weak applied field, right? This is how ferromagnetic materials will have and presence of atomic dipole moments, and with respect to applied field, even if you remove this field, these dipole moments will retain for some of its value and you will have spontaneous magnetization, right? Now let us take another example, that is for strong field. Then what is going to happen for strong field? This is for weak field. This is for weaker fields. Now if the field is strong, then we'll have more H field lines. This is for stronger field. Right? That is number 2. Stronger field applies. Then what is going to happen is, let us see. That right, so this will be the direction, and that this will be the direction, this will be the direction, and this will be the direction. Now here you see that these two domains are trying themselves to orient in such a way that it will join this domain. It will join the direction of this domain. Right? Remember, this is in strong applied field. When a field is strong enough, then the domain will try to change or try to orient themselves in a direction where the applied field is there, where the applied field is having a direction. So this is going to directing over this side, this is also directing toward this side, this is also directing toward this side, and this is directing towards this side. So let us see the words. Here's what it has been written. The magnetization rotates towards the direction of the field H. So So the direction of the fields H, right? So this is what we understood about the domains. Domains are nothing but small parts in a solid where small pieces are being divided into subcategories. Without external field, the domains are being oriented, are being surrounded or being situated. They will arrange themselves in such a way that net resultant will be zero. Net moment of this will be zero. In presence of H, it will not be zero. In presence of H, we have two categories of H value, that is weak H and stronger H. Weak H, we have already seen that it will try to increase the domain size. It will try to increase the domain size in weaker field. And in the presence of H, that is in for a stronger field, that is for a strong field applied, the direction of the total resultant atomic moment, try to point towards the direction of the applied field. The direction of the applied field. So this is all about the ferromagnetic domains and its orientation in the presence of external magnetic field H. External magnetic field H. Okay.